I stared at my phone screen, heart pounding, when the group text notification appeared from my cousins. The message was brief and cold: "You weren't invited." No explanation. My breath caught, and a wave of disbelief washed over me. Only yesterday. We were laughing over childhood memories in my parents' living room. Now I felt disconnected, as if invisible. The words burned, igniting a mixture of hurt and anger that settled deep in my chest. I had traveled back to my hometown of Chicago for what I thought was a celebratory dinner marking my 25th birthday. Instead, I found myself excluded, left standing on the outside looking in. My youngest cousin, Jenna, had always been the peacemaker, yet her reply was distant and evasive. Despite our close bond, her words felt like a betrayal. Rain began to patter against the cafe window where I sat, tears welled in my vision. My fingers shook as I typed a reply, but I hesitated before sending. I wanted answers, but I feared their explanations. The plan was to meet at the Ember Room, a chic bistro with brick walls and amber lights. I had reserved the corner table weeks before, envisioning a warm reunion. Now those thoughts felt naive and foolish. A barista brought me a mug of chamomile tea, her smile offering the comfort in that space. I took a deep breath and stepped outside into the night. The city lights of Chicago shimmered off pavement as I debated my next move. Should I confront my cousins face to face, or retreat into the safety of my rented apartment? Pride wrestled with insecurity. I felt small against the towering skyline that once inspired me. Footsteps in the alley beside the bistro, and I paused, then aware of. Alone I had become family. I checked the time and noticed it was nearly 7. I reminded myself why I had made the reservation in the first place and summoned courage. Inside the bistro, warm golden light spilled from the windows, creating a glow. I pushed open the heavy doors and inhaled the aroma of roasting garlic and sautéing herbs. The hostess looked up and nodded briefly before I walked past the polished bar. In the corner, I glimpsed my cousins clustered around a long mahogany table. The hostess offered a polite nod as I stepped inside. Candlelight flickered across the polished floor, and soft jazz hummed through the speakers overhead. I scanned the room until I spotted them, Jenna, Marcus, and Rachel, in conversation. They laughed and clinked glasses, oblivious to my presence at first. My chest tightened as I approached, echoing in my mind. A waiter passed by, a tray of appetizers that looked exquisite. I hesitated before reaching the table. Rachel looked up, her smile faltering for a moment before she replaced it with a guarded expression. Jenna shifted in her seat, eyes flicking away. Marcus shrugged, as though my arrival were expected but unremarkable. My voice came out steadier than I felt. Why wasn't I invited? I asked, setting my empty teacup on a nearby side table. Silence stretched around us, punctuated only by the clink of silverware on porcelain and the low murmur of other diners. Before any of them could speak, a tall man in a crisp chef's coat emerged from the swinging kitchen door. His presence commanded attention, dark hair neatly trimmed, hands dusted in flour, and eyes that scanned the dining room like he owned it. At his belt hung a small notebook and pen. He paused when he saw me. Recognition flickered in his gaze. And he called out, "Emily, over here." My heart skipped. Emily? The chef smiled warmly as he approached. Cousins shifted, exchanging uncomfortable glances. I swallowed hard. Chef Morales, I said, nodding. His reputation preceded him, top culinary schools, features in magazines, and a Michelin nod rumored to be imminent. I hadn't realized. We had met before, but his smile suggested otherwise. He guided me to a seat beside him at the chef's counter, leaving my cousins staring from their table. I trust you got my message, he asked quietly. I stared across the dining room. Then met his gaze. You did? I whispered. Brandishing his notebook, he tapped a line I hadn't seen, a special seat for my dearest cousin. In my name. My back stiffened. The entire restaurant felt suspended in that moment. My cousins' faces blanched. Jenna jumped up and murmured apologies. Rachel looked bewildered. Marcus scowled. But I sat frozen, staring at the chef. He leaned in and said softly, "Dinner's on me tonight. Let's create something unforgettable." The low hum of conversation resumed around us, but for a heartbeat, time slowed as I realized the entire evening had shifted from exclusion to celebration, one carefully orchestrated by someone who believed I belonged more than my own family did. I took a trembling breath, feeling the weight of hurt lift just enough to notice excitement flutter in my belly. Whatever came next, I knew this night would change everything. I followed Chef Morales past the chef's counter into the kitchen's warm glow, my heart still hammering from the sudden shift of power in the dining room. Stainless steel surfaces gleamed under the bright overhead lamps, and the air was thick with the scent of sizzling garlic and fresh basil. Line cooks moved with fluid precision, plating dishes like dancers in a well-rehearsed ballet. I felt both out of place and utterly at home. This was where I belonged tonight, not tucked away at that long mahogany table. Chef Morales glanced back at me, his eyes soft but determined. "Ready?" he asked, and in that moment I realized I was more than ready. I was eager. He handed me a crisp white apron embroidered with his initials and guided me to the prep station. A polished wooden cutting board waited beside neat piles of heirloom tomatoes, thick wedges of burrata, and fragrant basil leaves. "We're crafting a special caprese salad tonight," he said. "Simple, but every ingredient needs attention." My fingers trembled as I tied the apron around my waist. In every family gathering I'd been the reserved one. Tonight I was stepping into a world I'd only admired from afar, wielding a chef's knife beside a master craftsman. My cousins peered through the swinging doors, astonished, and I felt a rush of vindication surge through me as I began slicing tomatoes. Memories of my childhood flickered behind my eyes, baking sugar cookies with Grandma Rose, our flour-dusted laughter echoing through her tiny kitchen. My mother guiding my small hands to stir sauces, teaching me patience, even the time my cousin Marcus accidentally spilled chili across the countertop and I'd quietly helped him clean it up. Those moments felt distant now, stained by the sting of being deliberately left out. Yet here I was, reclaiming those early joys, proving to myself, and to them, that I had a place at any table I chose. Chef Morales demonstrated the technique first, a smooth, even motion, keeping the blade low. And the slices uniform. "When you slice with intention," he said, his voice calm and encouraging, "you honor every seed, every drop of juice." He nodded at my cut, slightly uneven, but full of heart. I smiled, finding confidence in his words. With each carefully arranged tomato slice, every dollop of burrata, and each basil leaf laid with precision, I lost myself in the rhythm of creation. The kitchen noise receded into a distant hum, and I felt a warmth bloom in my chest far stronger than the oven's heat. A line cook called out that tables 2 and 6 were ready for their hot race, but Chef Morales waved him off. "Tonight, we're doing something different," he said, tossing me a small ramekin of house-made olive oil infused with rosemary. "Drizzle this around the plate. It ties everything together." The fragrant oil glistened as I poured, and I noticed my cousins shifting uncomfortably, their eyes flicking from me to the plate shimmering under the kitchen lights. Rangers of chefs and servers gathered at the pass, murmuring in surprise at the sight of me standing beside their head chef. I swallowed hard, feeling equal parts exhilarated and vulnerable. Chef Morales leaned close, voice low. "I invited you here because I've watched you grow up, your passion, your kindness, your talent," he confided. "I wanted to show your family that you're more than welcome, here and wherever you choose to shine." His words wrapped around me like a warm blanket, easing the residual sting from my cousin's earlier jabs. I realized then that this night wasn't just about cooking, it was a statement, a declaration of my worth. I squared my shoulders and met his gaze, determination lighting my eyes. "Thank you," I whispered. "For everything." We plated the final salad with care, then Chef Morales signaled the servers. I followed him back into the dining room, the plate balanced expertly on a white-gloved hand. My cousin sat rigidly as I approached their table. Jenna's eyes brimmed with tears. Rachel looked torn between guilt and awe. Marcus avoided my gaze altogether. I placed the salad in front of them, and the hush that fell over the table was almost sacred. The vibrant reds and greens practically glowed under the candlelight. I felt a surge of pride pulse through me. This wasn't just food, it was my Voice, my identity, served on a porcelain stage as they tasted the salad. I watched their expressions transform, surprise, delight, then an unspoken apology blooming in Jenna's tear-filled eyes. The restaurant's buzz seemed to soften around us. For a moment, the world narrowed to that one table, to the caprese salad that spoke louder than any confrontation. Chef Morales stood behind me, arms crossed, an unreadable smile on his lips. I realized that this dinner would never be about exclusion again, it was about connection, about reminding those I loved that I deserved a seat at every table. Later, as the evening wound down and the last plates clattered back into the kitchen, Chef Morales found me leaning against the stainless steel counter. "You did it," he said simply. I exhaled, the tension melting from my shoulders. "We did it," I corrected, because I knew this victory wasn't mine alone. It belonged to every cook who had guided me, every family memory that had shaped me, and every ounce of courage I'd mustered. As the kitchen lights dimmed and the staff dispersed, I felt ready for whatever came next, ready to reclaim my place, both at my cousin's table and in my own life. I woke the next morning to the soft hum of the city stirring outside my window. Chicago's dawn light spilled through the curtains, painting the apartment walls in muted gold. My body ached pleasantly from the night before, my hands still faintly tinged with olive oil and garlic, my hair carrying a lingering aroma of basil. In the kitchen, I brewed coffee strong enough to remind me that reality still awaited beyond last night's triumph. As I sipped, memories of Chef Morales's encouraging nod, the blur of stainless steel, and my cousin's stunned faces floated through my mind like yesterday's photograph, rich and vivid, walking through Lincoln Park toward the cafe where I'd planned to meet Jenna and Rachel for brunch. I felt a curious lightness in my step. The lake breeze teased stray strands of my hair, and autumn leaves, crisp and amber, crunched under my feet. My phone buzzed with messages, apologies, thank you notes, and invitations to family dinners I'd assumed were lost. Marcus's text struck me hardest, short, awkward, but heartfelt. "I'm sorry, Em. Can we talk?" My chest tightened as I hit reply, fingers hovering over the keyboard. I wanted to forgive, and I needed to hear his apology aloud. The cafe's door chimed as I entered, and I spotted Jenna already seated by the window, sunlight haloing her hair. She stood when she saw me, eyes reddened but bright. Her handshake turned into a hug that felt genuine and unforced. Rachel arrived moments later, offering a shy smile and a pastry box as a peace offering. We ordered lattes and avocado toast smeared with chili flakes. Conversation flowed hesitantly at first, awkward glances, stilted small talk, until I took a steadying breath and asked them to tell me what had happened at the family group chat. Jenna swallowed, clasping her mug. She explained that Marcus had felt overshadowed after I graduated from culinary school and began interning under Chef Morales. He'd worried our parents would praise me more and dim his own achievements. Rachel admitted she'd followed along without questioning because she wanted to belong. Guilt tugged at me, but understanding softened its edge. I recounted my side, how the text had wounded me, how I'd felt exiled in my own family. By the time our plates were empty, I realized we'd all shared fears of invisibility. Even as we battled for attention, we left the cafe arm in arm, stepping into the crisp afternoon. Our breath formed little clouds as we walked through a nearby farmer's market bustling with late-season produce. Bright squash and deep purple grapes spilled from wooden crates, and the air smelled of cinnamon buns and fresh-pressed cider. I paused at a stall selling homemade bread and bought 3 loaves, one for me, one for Jenna, one for Rachel. It felt symbolic, as though we were breaking bread to mend what had been broken. They smiled at me, and I felt the old bond reknit stitch by stitch. That evening, I invited my cousins to my apartment for a homemade pasta dinner. I spent hours kneading dough at my counter, dusting the surface with flour as I rolled out long, glossy sheets of fettuccine. I simmered a simple tomato sauce infused with garlic, onion, and fresh herbs from my windowsill garden. My heart thrummed as I remembered last night's kitchen victory and the power of food to heal. When the doorbell rang, I wiped my hands on a towel, smoothing off stray flour, and swung open the door to reveal Jenna and Rachel, each holding a bottle of wine. We settled at my small dining table, lit by a single candle flickering between us. I served the pasta, swirling ribbons onto each plate. The sauce clung to the noodles, flecked with basil and the sheen of olive oil. We toasted to forgiveness, growth, and the unpredictable beauty of family. Marcus arrived later, knocking shyly before stepping inside. He sat quietly at first, then lifted his glass and offered a sincere apology. I felt tears sting my eyes as I forgave him. The weight I'd carried since the group text lifted like steam from the hot pasta. After dinner, we moved to the living room, feet tucked beneath us on plush rugs. Laughter bubbled as we recalled childhood mischief, pie fights in the backyard, stolen sips of lemonade, secret treehouse meetings. The years of distance melted away, replaced by genuine connection. I realized that being chosen by Chef Morales had reminded me of my own value, but it was my willingness to open my heart that truly mended our family ties. In that moment, surrounded by cousins who once rejected me, I felt wholly accepted. The next day, I returned to the Ember Room, but this time as a guest. Chef Morales waved me in from the kitchen doorway, his smile as warm as the grill fire behind him. He introduced me to the new sous chef, praising how I'd reclaimed my confidence and heart. I sampled a velvety squash soup, its sweetness balanced by a hint of sage. Sitting at a small table by the bar, I reflected on the winding journey that had brought me here, from exclusion to empowerment. My phone remained tucked away. I wanted to savor the present without distractions. By evening's end, a review editor approached me, asking to interview me for a feature on rising culinary talents. My heartbeat quickened at the thought of sharing my story, the one about family, resilience, and the courage to claim my seat at any table. I agreed, realizing that my journey had broader meaning beyond personal vindication. It was a testament to the transformative power of inclusion and the simple truth that believing in oneself can inspire others to believe, too. Back home, I drafted a thank you message to Chef Morales and another apology to my cousins, though it felt more like closure than atonement. I fell asleep dreaming of future menus, family gatherings, and endless possibilities. The city's nightlights twinkled through my window, promising new chapters yet unwritten. As I drifted off, I carried with me the lesson that true belonging is forged not by invitation but by the courage to step forward, apron tied, ready to create, and to welcome others to the table alongside you.